Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is, how do I restore my happiness? Part of my everyday. I'm finding this difficult as a result of emerging or exposing a narcissist or a psychopath, and I really have no other place to go. How do I restore my happiness? This is a great viewer question because it calls into question the influence of other people on your happiness. Abraham Lincoln, I'm just about as happy as I make myself out to be, as I choose, basically. Happiness is a choice. So a lot of people don't really stop to think, ponder, or really digest that concept. And oftentimes people, if they don't understand a concept, they're not able to pursue it. They're not able to believe in it. They're not able to trust in it. And instead they resign. They give up. They say, I was born on the wrong side of the tracks. I'm always waking up on the wrong side of the bed. This isn't meant for me. My happiness, maybe that you see in others. You might feel that you pale by comparison, or something is not clicking inside. So to understand happiness is to understand that oftentimes the deficit of happiness is a result of judgment or fear or condemnation. Oftentimes these states, including shame, embarrassment, low self-esteem, these serve like an anchor to keep unhappiness in place. Just like a ship that throws down their anchor because they want to dock by the bay, really the negative emotions gone unchecked. And if you don't stop to take a moment and realize this constant or chronic feeling of unhappiness, which can also result in anxiety and depression, begs the question that you need to stop and take a moment and understand what is the cause is creating this effect of being unhappy. Oftentimes, if you're in a relationship with a controlling or malignant or manipulative individual, you will not be able to pull up or really have experience being happy. There is not enough repetition and experience with being happy, especially if you have been inundated with messages of shame, devaluation, and discarding. Basically the love bomb, the devalue, and discard, the cycle that we see going through relationships that are with someone who is a malignant narcissist or psychopath. This is just their pattern. Like an Argyle pattern, it is a pattern. It tends to repeat itself. So you have to be able to break out of the cycle, break out of the pattern, and take a step back enough to unenmesh yourself, meaning having your I am and not feeling fearful for extricating yourself from condemnation, criticism, or control, or really outright violation or pathological lying behavior, such as we see in the psychopath. And we talk about those two because there is a good degree of overlap, I feel, in the experience of others, although the severity or its experience or length of time can vary person to person. I feel that the outcome or result or symptom is, across the board, very consistent and similar with people. In other words, they have to keep their happiness secretive. They have to keep their joy secretive. They have to keep their I am a secret. They have to keep it bottled up. They have to keep it in the basement. They have to keep it in the attic. They have to keep it at a friend's house. They're not able to be happy oftentimes in the presence of a manipulator, because why? It throws them off. They can feel jealous. They feel envious for no reason. They don't feel you have the right. You don't deserve it. And then you're going to be inundated with looks, looks that could kill, looks that hurt, people talking about your back, whispering things about you, and you might be, the other thing is that that is known as a smear campaign and triangulation when we talk about this. So if you talk positively about people when they're not there, then you don't have to be guilty. You don't have to engage in this similar habit structure that you will see a narcissist or a psychopath engaging in. They really like to sort of set up these moving parts where they can unload or undish people's problems, and it makes them, be very pointed in their speech. Meaning, pointed in their speech, which means I think there's a biblical reference, not looking at the shard of wood in your own eye. In other words, not looking at yourself, but always pointing the finger at others. So it's an easy way to get off the hook or to, blame others for your happiness. So there's a payoff oftentimes. If people are always, upset by situations, you have to realize that is the situation. And oftentimes that might be unchangeable for you. You have to understand and then give yourself permission to extricate yourself, which means move back a bit and hold space and have your I am that is based in the neutral. Stop carrying the torch and judging yourself and belittling yourself or acquiescing to the judgment standards of someone who is trying to, minimize you or dismiss your presence. This will create, a very ongoing groove within, which is known as conditioning or programming for your happiness. And so if happiness is contingent on another people accepting you or validating you or, closure or asking for apologies, you might find yourself never getting that closure or never getting to the state of happiness. So you will drag this out and harbor this for a long period of time, which then can make it feel like the impossible. So it's like undoing a negative emotional habit. And so if your happiness, then oftentimes people have to understand the cause that creates this effect. So as before, you have to understand where, acquiescing, which means, giving in to the judgment of a narcissist. Did you feel that this external source, if they finally accepted you to be perfect or to be just what they needed, that only then would you feel pleasure or happiness? If you're pivoting your happiness on something, the approval of another, or need to hear apologies for closure, you might be waiting a very long time, because the narcissist oftentimes doesn't want to, they are not comfortable with humility or humbleness. To them, they feel that their public persona might be diminished. They're no longer viewed how they want to be viewed. They're very connected or attached to an outcome. So that's why we see narcissistic injury and narcissistic rage when people aren't, in suit to what they need. In other words, it's just, like the Rolling Stones said, you don't always get what you want, you get what you need. And so what you need is going to be your godsend and not what you want. You might want compliments, a relationship with a narcissist. You might have wanted things to go a specific way, but that, if it's a relationship that is not working, it's like the you're casting the stone, and that rejection is the cornerstone to the new better life, the new better blueprint for you. They allude to this in the Bible. In other words, if you find that you don't fit in with a specific crowd, don't worry about it. Don't judge yourself. Oftentimes, this consternation and guilt will be based on a comparison, which is based in the egoic mind. So you want to get off of just appeasing the egoic mind. In other words, how you look, how other people evaluate you. This puts a lot of undue pressure, and oftentimes it will rob you of your happiness. Your happiness is based on a feeling of pleasure and a certain degree of content, humility, and humbleness, and also looking towards the future and knowing that this ability or this experience will not be leached out or stolen from you like a vampire, an energetic vampire, someone who is really wanting you to be a supply and give up, who you are and what you need to say for them. In other words, it's very difficult to extricate yourself if this has been an emotional pattern, a relationship pattern, a way of relating, how you approach relationships. People don't oftentimes realize it, but they might approach relationships then with low self-esteem, not feeling good about self. This is a recipe for unhappiness. And if you have arrived at that judgment, at the words, at the looks, at the messages of a malignant narcissist or psychopath, and you are evaluating yourself based on how you have helped them and not what you need for yourself, then you are engaged in flawed thinking. You are engaged in erroneous thinking. That is what the narcissist will do to continue supply when they need it. So it's kind of like people will then sort of flock to a narcissist when they have hard times. In other words, in the past. You might be seeing this now, but in other words, trying to win favor with the narcissist, I think is a struggle to be, to err on the side of meeting their judgment, really sort of as a guidepost. In other words, becoming what the narcissist wants you want to have. And it is, or become. But yet you have to realize your expectations. What are your true expectations and dreams and desires? Despite whatever is happening with them, where are you happy? And it might not be what makes the narcissist happy. What makes the narcissist happy might be something very superficial, very unimportant. It might be based on their egoic needs, and it doesn't hold any water or salt with you. So, but oftentimes to become a people pleaser, you might need to acquiesce or pretend as if, and you cannot be yourself. Be your strengths, have your desires. You might want to have a family, and this person, does not want to have a family. They have too many egoic challenges that they have to, have in their life before they will become committed. If that's the case, then so it is. It doesn't mean that you have to miss years and decades of your life waiting for them. You have to be able to, champion your own desires and your desire, especially for happiness, and to realize that this is a changing thing. So what brought you happiness before, it's okay to let that go and say, that is enough. My happiness has been satisfied, and I'm now counting my blessings and existing in a space of gratitude for whatever that is. Maybe you have a comfortable bed, you have a great place to live, you have food in the cabinet, you still have your wits about you, you still are living according to what you feel is your best interest, and you're engaging in relationships that are supportive rather than negative and derogatory or fear-based. And then slowly but surely removing that fear base for your life, because oftentimes people promulgate or direct their lives based out of fear. If I don't do this, I'm not perfect. If I don't do this, they have a lot of self-judgment going on. So you have to detach from that habit of self-deprecation. Sure, sometimes it's funny if people deprecate, but it becomes very serious when it becomes an ongoing sort of inner voice where you feel that you're not good enough. You are ashamed. You feel that you can't hold your own in the presence of another. These are good indicators that you need to look at and sort of scour out a lot of the negative messages that might have been imprinted or planted by this individual or individuals or community or wherever, your workplace, wherever it is you've received a lot of these very strong messages. It reminds me right now of in African art. There was a great African art museum at university where I attended, and they have just magnificent relics and carvings that have been donated to the museum for appreciation. And if you look at a lot of the African, I had a very good friend who also studied, this sort of very primitive art, and then had a really awesome way to incorporate it with the modern. And then he would use these African fetish figures, and I think you'd just call them sculptures. I think a lot of them were called fetish dolls. But you would look, and if you were to study it, as he did, they have a fetish figure, which then will have like a spike nail that goes into the head. So a lot of the fetish dolls from the African culture, and I'm just reflecting on this, this is the meaning that I personally derive, but it's like, sometimes thoughts and what you're told are hammered into your mind, just like that African art, like it's putting nails, it's nailing it in. And so you have to understand what negative has been nailed in about you that's really causing a burden or suffering or emotional turmoil. I am not perfect, I think, is a big one, because the narcissist, they have, a specific way, because you're really an extension of them and their needs. They need you to be a specific way, even if it's not in your best interest. So you might have adopted and adapted, to that persona in order just to even survive. I don't know what that was. I just saw a mosquito or something. So anyway, then this is kind of like part of the undergirding music of your day, if you will. It's kind of like the soundtrack of your life. You might have a lot of these negative, sort of what you feel is hammered in and are difficult to get out. You have power to clean the slate. You have the power and ability through the role of metacognition, which means the ability to reflect back and think about what you're thinking about, and sort of like evaluating a movie, or evaluating for yourself, evaluating a painting. What is the meaning that you have derived from that? In other words, people then assimilate this subconsciously. You have to understand the subconscious is driving the engine. It's driving the plane. It's driving the train. It's in the driver's seat. So your subconscious is so powerful because oftentimes that it's important to know that you have to get into the slower brain waves in order to hear the subconscious and allow it to get to work. And just like exercise, with repetition and experience, you will improve in this skill. And you can understand what is really operating at the core of your unhappiness. And you could even use your list, write out on a piece of paper from 10 to 20, or 1 through 20. The feelings that make me very unhappy are. So, and then remove your inner censor, just write it all out, even if it doesn't seem, correct. The feelings that really make me unhappy are. Get to know yourself, get to know these internal commands, get to know your inner secretive self. This will become easier with time. Even if you get one answer is significant. Where have you, in what pockets, in what, crossroads of your journey, were you sitting on a bench where you got criticized? Were you walking? Were you running? Where were you so hyper-criticized and meant to be ashamed for your very being? The narcissist will get at that level. They'll upset, people at that level because they really treat others as extensions of themselves. They are threatened oftentimes by the growth of others that don't, incur a dependency or a trauma bond with the relationship. So, you have to find your unique basis, which unique and original for you, even though it does not make sense, what really makes me unhappy is. And then list it all out. And then you'll have to realize that this is what is burdening you. This is the darkness that's standing between you and your happiness, are these unconscious fears or blocks that oftentimes go unchecked, and so they rule the roost, if that makes any sense. For sure, they rule the nest. They rule your internal feeling mode. So if you are fearful because you're not perfect, because oftentimes a narcissist, you're not here to become perfect. I mean, you don't have to be perfect. Perfection is a very difficult thing to attain and will absorb a lot of people's energy, and then will feel very unhappy if this is not the case. So, you're going to go through a lot of ups and downs, oftentimes those that can be prevented. So knowing what sets you off, knowing what triggers you, be willing to let it go. Be willing to detach from that thought, oftentimes that is the predecessor of the feelings. I am not good enough. These are, you need to put a little bit of articulation. What is it that really caused you to feel unhappy? I'm not like everybody else. Well, great news. That's okay because you're unique. I think you found something, a statement that's actually very limited, that's actually very uplifting and is actually very energizing. I am not like everybody else. You need to change the tone of this statement and how it is resonating within you. And instead of feeling bad about it, realize that this is actually a positive. I am not like everybody else. Hallelujah. I am me and I am free. The old Marlo Timus song, Free to Be You and Me. That was a big hit record, growing up. Free to be you and me. So just think, if you are not free to be yourself, how difficult a sentence that would be. I suggest you unlock the keys to your own prison. Stop holding yourself hostage. Stop holding yourself in a constant fear mode or sort of inundated feeling that you have to cage up your emotions. This can become a real barricade and barrier, especially when people feel that that this has then created a whole swath of their life where they were unhappy. They were just in what I would call a valley moment. They were down in the valley and always looking up and feeling that the journey was impossible. So you need to realize that certain, and you can look at this list that is unique to you and realize, is that something that I really have to, is that something I really have to be unhappy about? A lot of, people are used to feeling that they are the cause of the problem when they're in a relationship with a controlling, manipulative, a malignant narcissist or a psychopath. They have been led to believe that they are the problem. So in other words, which couldn't be further from the truth. You are you are different, and you are unique. Why should this be an object of consternation or guilt or used to make you feel ashamed or oppressed? Why, this is nothing more than a fleeting comment. You have to, allow it to dissipate. You have to allow it to go back to the source from which it came. Thank you for the comment, but no thank you. You have to know the difference. And you can work on increasing your serenity and your security with I know better. I know better now. I know better now. So you have to be able to follow and trust the process and realize what specifically to you is making you unhappy. And oftentimes that is nothing more than a judgment-based opinion of another who is trying to get you either, under their control or so that they can take credit for your happiness. You need to realize that you are responsible and credible for your happiness. And you can enjoy more happiness once you identify a lot of the defense mechanisms or thoughts that are, adding into your unhappiness, and let them go. In other words, the constant need to be perfect, the constant need to appease or please others. It is too difficult a chore for you to try to create a specific outcome in others. What you can do is what you can do. Their response is up to them. To burden yourself with this is to engage in flawed thinking. It is not your fault. You do not have to own and possess the negative inundations that you have, absorbed previously. It's very interesting that in children who have, been the object of contempt, scorn, ridicule, humiliation, for not being fully evolved yet as children, oftentimes they will then live on this tenet of their personality. I am a troublemaker. I am miserable. I am, so you have to understand that these are oftentimes B states that are though so imprinted and so reinforced that they become part of the the soundtrack of your life, and you need to stop playing those over and over. Get rid of the records, donate them, purge them out of your system, and take it off play when you hear that begin to play again. Just say, nope, that is the flawed thinking. That is nothing more than the result of judgment at the hands of someone who thought they had power over me, and that is not the truth, and so it is. Those comments are to serve their needs and to not serve yours, which oftentimes puts you at a deficit or lack of support for your I am. So oftentimes people then go through many years and decades of their life never being empowered, never being themselves, never being happy. So if your happiness is contingent on specific things, compliments, ego strokes, another person, you're going to set yourself up for some instability and then chronic unhappiness because it goes unchecked. You have to have some checks and balances for yourself. And so to free that up, if I weren't so ashamed, I would really love to. Even though I've been told that this is wrong, what really makes me happy is. And list 1 through 20. Of course, if it's something illegal, then we got a problem. We're talking about everyday people who need to restore their internal state and create a new upgrade within so that they are coming from a position of happiness and absence of fear rather than fear and intimidation and the feeling that they are not good enough. Does that make sense? And this might be a growing change and evolution and metamorphosis for you, but you are responsible for alchemizing, which means alchemizing the states. Just like the great alchemists of the day, they would take these base metals and turn it into a gold, a precious metal. So it's restoring those precious I am, which might be very fragile for you. So you have to be careful and you have to be sensitive. Even if you're a male, oh my God, peace and harmony, I'm fragile. So what? It is okay. It is okay. It's okay to be delicate. It's okay to be working on this. It's okay to get stronger. It is okay to be happiness and take pleasure in your higher order thinking so that happiness can be there. And that way you can then have a boundary and a standard. So you that are able to know and deflect the negative comments, the negative looks, the negative, smear campaign where they're trying to triangulate you and make you feel jealous, all sorts of tactics. You won't fall for the ploys of manipulation. You won't fall for it. You will stand for something. And if you stand for something, if you don't stand for something, you just might fall for anything. So that was a great John Cougar Mellencamp chorus. And then even though I don't know how to yet, I would really love to. So you might be in the development process of increasing and growing your happiness. So keep these lists in front of you. When you're feeling resourceless, have a list to pull up and say, that's right. If I weren't really so ashamed, I would love to. And then start doing it before your internal censor has a chance to stop you, and talk you out of it. I don't want to work out. I don't, things that, are new for you. You might have to get over the hump. What is your biggest hump or hurdle, and how can you raise that hurdle down? The hurdle is lowered. Let's go for it now. Be willing to have the leverage over yourself and be able to find that you can be happy with very little. Oftentimes you might have been taught or reinforced that you can only be happy when and if. What is your when and if? And be able to sort of expose those self-limiting beliefs that have hindered your happiness and realize that you can be happy, just being. And so it is. And so it is. It doesn't have to be what you buy. It doesn't have to be what other people do, say, or become. Your happiness should be, within. And work on cultivating and nurturing that, especially if it's contradictory to what you've been told by the narcissist, that you were made to feel fearful or ashamed because of your own qualities. Do not feel ashamed of yourself based on the erroneous judgment and flawed thinking of another. Take back your happiness. This is your time. This is your life. And also, if it makes you feel better, the great creator wants you to be happy and live in abundance. He wants you to be yourself, to do the do. You are unique. You don't have to be like the narcissist. You do not have to appease the narcissist. You don't have to swallow your pride, your guilt. You don't have to do that anymore. Stop the negative habits that are contributing to your unhappiness and look at the positive. Give yourself permission today and resonate with your strengths and know what they are and release all else. Don't make it part of your vocabulary, your undergirding thoughts. Release it and let it go. Send it free to the ether. Let Mother Earth recycle the negative. She can do wonderful things. She can heal herself. Give it up to the Great Spirit, the universe that can wash you clean. Just allow it to be, and so it is. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Have a beautiful day and release guilt that you might feel for being happy. You are worth it and you are deserving. Be you, be free. Peace be with you.